What's up, everybody? It's your favorite FPL YouTubers back out with another preseason analysis video. We are officially balls deep into preseason. The season is right around the corner. I think it's 9 days away at this point. We are excited. I know you're excited. So let's get right into it. I'm Jarrett.
And I'm Evan.
And this is How to FPL.
All right, guys. So we've got another exciting video for you today. We're going to go over a lot of logistical stuff. We've got some transfer updates. We've got some teams with formation changes or formations that are up in the air for this season. Lots of talk about wingbacks. We've got some new up-and-coming prospects based on players' preseason performances. I love alliteration. And then we're going to talk about some fads that we see circulating in the FPL community and kind of our opinions on those. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Jarrett will start us off.
Yeah, so the first topics that we wanted to discuss are, formation changes of different teams going into this season. Obviously, City and Liverpool both have true strikers now, which definitely could change the dynamics of those teams. I think it'll probably end up changing City's dynamic a little more than Liverpool's, just because it seemed like Darwin just kind of slotted right in without any problems, really. Honestly, I think the bigger development for Liverpool's formation, which we'll get into when we get to the wingback slide, is actually having Luis Diaz playing regularly instead of Mane. I think he actually very much changes the dynamic of how their wingbacks work, which we can get into. But Haaland at City is very interesting because they're no longer going to have six midfielders all trying to occupy these attacking spaces. They have Erling Haaland to try and feed the ball into. I think that means their wingers can get a lot farther forward, and I would expect De Bruyne to be getting very far forward as well, which makes his FPL prospects absolutely tantalizing. Another development that we've seen in preseason so far is Wolves have been playing with a back four, and that might reduce the appeal of their wingbacks. And it also will likely make them a little less likely to keep clean sheets. Last season, Wolves were one of the most reliable defenses, but we also knew that they had a lot of problems going forward. And so it looks like their attempt to address this might be to sacrifice some goals on the defensive end to try and cash in on some extra ones on the attacking end. In addition to that, there's also some questions right now around Chelsea's formation. It looks like they'll probably play with a back three and then wing backs to start the season. They were experimenting with a back four and then got destroyed by Arsenal and switched to a back three instead. And so they'll likely end up switching to a back three, but even if they don't change their formation, there are definitely some question marks around Chelsea right now, which we'll get into. Anything to add, Evan?
No, I mean, we can talk about the Chelsea thing later too,
Yeah.
but I know you have pretty strong opinions about James and Chilwell right about now. Do you think that Chelsea's change, or that the way Chelsea are set up right now, do you think that those two are in a void?
I think there are probably better options to start the season. We can get into that when we talk about the wingbacks, though, which is right here.
Sure.
So I wanted to first start out with the sexiest ones, in my opinion, Robbo and Trent. Liverpool wingbacks have been legendary for several FPL seasons now, and it looks like they can only really get better, to be honest with you. They have great fixtures. We know they return points pretty regularly. And the point I wanted to get into with Luis Diaz was that when he's playing on the left, I was looking at a study that I can't remember who it was on FPL Twitter that did it, but they were basically analyzing Robbo's position when Luis Diaz is playing on the left with him versus like Mane or Jota. And Robbo is consistently occupying more attacking positions to where he can then deliver crosses in and even come in and get on the ends of crosses. And that might be a reason why he was scoring so well at the end of last season when they were playing Luis Diaz pretty regularly. You know, it might not be. A lot of people are talking about, I don't think Robbo will keep up that level of performance that he was at the end of last season. And I don't think there's any reason to suggest otherwise, to be honest. Then getting into the Chelsea wingbacks, I think there are just generally question marks around Chelsea right now. They've lost so many defenders. They lost Rudiger. It looks like they're going to lose Azpilicueta. They lost Christensen. And all they've brought in is Koulibaly, if I'm not mistaken. And, yeah, I mean, obviously there are going to be question marks around that, keeping less clean sheets than they have before. And Chelsea's wingbacks, I'm sure, will still produce pretty well. But their fixtures also really aren't that great defensively to start the season. Like, if we actually just analyze their fixtures to start the season, they might look okay from an attacking point of view, but they're playing a lot of teams that could score goals on them. So I wouldn't really expect clean sheets there, which makes me think there are going to be better wingback options to start the season. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's funny. I agree. I actually haven't had a Chelsea defender in one of my drafts since my very first couple drafts. And I think I've always been of the opinion that Trent and Robertson and Cancelo are just better options, even when the Chelsea wingbacks were expected to be playing at their level of last season. I just like the City and Liverpool, especially because they have the good fixtures too. So yeah, I agree. And I also think that what you just said applies to Mendy as well. And I think you can see all of this reflected in people's drafts in forums and on Twitter. I think people are really starting to question Chelsea. So
definitely,
I think they might be in a void.
And you were just talking about Cancelo getting into the Man City defense. I think that there are some very interesting options there. Ederson has been really popular in drafts just because he's a $5.5 million route into a Man City defender. But we might have an even cheaper one if Cucurella doesn't complete his move to City, which it's looking like he might not at this point. We've got Kyle Walker starting in the City defense assuming he's starting in the City defense for $5 million, which is an absolute bargain in my opinion. Getting into Cancelo, I actually have a hot take on that. If they do buy Cucurella and Cancelo ends up starting at right back, I actually do not think he is going to be worth his price tag. Because I think Cancelo, just hear me out on this and then feel free to chime in. I think Cancelo gets a lot of his FPL points from cutting in onto his right foot when he's on the left. And if he's playing on the right side, he's not going to be doing that as much, What do you think?
I mean, it's a good point. I do think that it's also up in the air already, with the addition of Haaland and how that's going to play out. I mean, I could see it just as easily where he plays on the right side and now he has better opportunities to cross into Haaland's head with his right foot. So I really do think that it's one of those things where we are going to have to see how it plays out. But I agree with you. He definitely looks less certain of a pick than last season. And I think if I did I have him in my team right now, but if I wanted to sacrifice some of my defense to boost up my attack, I probably would end up downgrading him to the likes of Walker or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Then getting into the Spurs wingbacks, they've been They were in a lot of early drafts, if you remember. I know we were pretty hot on Doherty right off the bat. A lot of people have had Perisic for a while, which we'll get into some more. But they have so many wingbacks right now that it just looks really uncertain there. In my opinion, Spurs wingbacks are probably an avoid at this point. What do you think?
Oh yeah. I think that this season we've been blessed with so many defensive options that I'm so happy, especially because of how many Spurs wingbacks there are. I'm so happy and content to wait and see on them. If one of them pops off, then that's a perfect opportunity to make a
Yeah,
transfer. But I'm not starting with one.
definitely. I'll just go through the last ones pretty quickly here. Dallo has looked really good in preseason, consistently taking up attacking positions. It looks like he's favored under Ten Hag too, so he's probably going to end up being the 4.5 mil defender of choice for most people, especially given United have pretty good opening fixtures. Zinchenko looks like an absolute beast in his debut the other day. He was pinging balls across the field over to Saka and everything. He's getting far forward. Given Tierney's injury right now, he's probably set to start the season at left back. We'll see if he ends up playing some more time at center mid, like we had talked about in the last video. But then we got Trippier, who just got another 2 assists in Newcastle's game, I think last night, which is, he's looking like a great option. Newcastle's fixtures aren't amazing, but they're also not bad, And if he's pretty nailed, he's on a lot of set pieces, he could be a really good option. And then also, I think a lot of people are overlooking Leicester defenders. They're all priced super cheap, and we didn't see it as much last season because they had so many injury problems, but they've traditionally been a pretty good defense. And they've traditionally had wingbacks that get really high up the pitch and get a lot of points. So I would be surprised to see, James Justin or Ricardo Pereira or Castan. I don't know who the 2 starting ones are going to be. That's why I'll probably wait and see before I get one. But I would not be surprised at all to see, them ending up being really good picks this season.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said, and I just think that this list is long enough that we've got some really tough choices. I mean, I just feel like we are picking from this giant pool of really good players, and you can only have 5 of them. So I think that 5 at the back is seeming like more and more of a really viable option this season.
Yeah, it's hard. We've got with how all the players were priced to where you can afford pretty much anyone. It's so hard to pick a starting 11 as we're all experiencing right now. So then getting into some transfer rumors, especially ones that could affect us in FPL. We'll get into it in a minute, but obviously Man United have been really hot in preseason. A lot of people are jumping on Rashford, Martial, Sancho, etc. And we're still wondering what what Man United are going to do in the transfer market, in addition to the transfers they've already made. Will Ronaldo end up staying or leaving? I think that could affect the team's dynamic a lot. And then there's been a lot of rumors recently about Antony from Ajax signing for United. You'd have to imagine if they're going to spend 60, 70 mil on Antony that he's going to be a regular starter, and so who does he displace? I think there are a lot of question marks there, which makes it a little scary to start the season with a lot of United assets. And then one of Evan's personal favorite players, Timo Werner, is rumored to be going to Newcastle, which he finds interesting.
I think Newcastle are interested in him.
Yeah.
I have no idea if he's interested in them. So, but we were talking about it, and it's actually, I mean, he's 8 million. That's around the price, I believe, of Callum Wilson last season. So it's not out of the question for the cost of a Newcastle forward. And if they're in good form and he goes, never know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's we just threw it in there because it's funny. I don't think it's relevant for the start of this
No,
season.
probably not.
But
It'd be fun. It'd be fun. I would love for Timo Werner to
Yeah.
have a redemption arc.
Yeah. All right. So we've got a lot of new prospects that are showing up since FPL launched the game this year. Jesus obviously is probably the star of the show this season. He's got 4 goals and 1 assist. A lot of Arsenal attackers look good, but Jesus definitely been stealing the spotlight, and he's at an extremely high ownership rate. I think it's a really good idea to start with him in your team. That's just my opinion. He's great value for what he's been outputting in preseason. Martial, we just talked about him. He has been playing really well, and he is an interesting disruption to the kind of the template that we've seen of a premium forward and then Jesus and then a cheap one, because where does Martial fit into that if you want him in? Some people are going no premium forwards, Martial and Jesus. So, just again, food for thought. Rashford's in a similar place. I think we see more of Rashford than Martial for the reason I just mentioned, which is that he seems to fit into people's team structures better. But again, this is again a wait and see. I think depending on United's how United's transfers play out. Kane and Son have both been looking spectacular in preseason, and I actually think that lately I've seen Kane in substantially more drafts than Haaland, just given the uncertainty over Haaland's minutes this season and Kane's form. We were also talking about, Kane and Son. You can, on paper, these stats look a little bit better for Kane, but we were, when you actually translate that into FPL points, they're about even, with Son maybe even coming in a little bit ahead. So both look like fantastic options. I think, Jarrett, I'm curious what you think about this too, but I think that the decision between Son and Kane really comes down to which team structure you prefer. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it really comes down to, do you want to be able to pivot between premium forwards, or do you want to be able to pivot between an extra premium midfielder? I personally, at this point, am preferring an extra premium midfielder, just because mids, even if Son is doing worse than Kane, statistically wise, he'll probably be scoring similar FPL points, just because midfielders get an extra point for each goal, and they get a point for clean sheets, and those really add up.
It's very true, especially when you add in, well, we can talk about the last person on this list, De Bruyne, especially when you factor in the fact that you might want him in your team at some point, because people are getting more wary of Haaland. So you put in De Bruyne, and if you combine let's say you do some quantum mathematics here, and you have the superposition of De Bruyne and Son compared to the superposition of Kane and Haaland, I think you're right. I think that Son and De Bruyne, at least the potential of either one of them, kind of outweighs Harry Kane on his own. So it's definitely some food for thought. And then the last one we've got here, Leon Bailey, has been looking pretty good in preseason. The question is, does he start? My personal opinion is that I think Gerrard actually made a comment about the fact that he would start if the season started tomorrow. So I really like him as a pick. He's in my team. Villa have decent fixtures for the first 3 games, and I think that if he flops, it's not the end of the world, because he's only taking up 5 million.
I think he could be a pretty good pick if you have someone else on your bench that you could play instead of him. If he gets dropped from the squad for whatever reason, I think he'll start the season, but he could be one of those players who's one bad performance away from getting benched.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we move on?
Just did.
Sweet. All right. So our last topic of the day is our fads. So I think that we were talking about what kind of constitutes a fad, and generally it seems to be people who are dubiously popular within the FPL community. And kind of the four we identified here are Perisic, Neto, Bailey, and just in general the Chelsea attack. We
Yeah.
can include
We're,
Mount
we're about
and
to get
Sterling
attacked
in
by
that, and
Chelsea
maybe even
fans in the
Havertz.
comments. I already know.
I know we're kind of down on Chelsea, but I mean there are arguments, especially I think there are arguments for Mount, just given his performance last season. I think I honestly think he's a better value than Sterling, especially because we don't know how well Sterling is going to do. Um, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that while we're on the
Yeah, I
topic.
mean, if you can find the extra 2 mil, I would rather have Sterling. I think people are forgetting that he used to consistently get like 20 goals a season. You know.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Well,
Yeah.
wait and see. I
Yeah.
think wait and see. Perisic. Well, you had some thoughts on Perisic. Do you want to get
Yeah. I
into
like
more of
what are
that?
people expecting from a 33-year-old wingback? Is my question. Like everyone was talking about how he's going
Yeah.
to absolutely revolutionize Spurs. I think he'll be decent. He's not going to play, all 90 minutes every game. He's decent going forward, but he's old, like, and he's playing the position where you have to run the most. I don't know what people were expecting, honestly.
Yeah. Now, I agree. And however, I will say what I can see is maybe he takes a little bit to get, kind of accustomed to the squad. But maybe come around game week 8 when people are wild carding, who knows? Maybe Spurs have transferred out some of
Yeah,
their wing backs. So, and his position in the squad is a little more set in stone. And maybe he's played a few games and got some double digit hauls. And all of a sudden he's looking like a valuable option. I think we should definitely keep him in our radar because we know that he's a great player and we know he has the potential to be a really good value
he could
pick
be
in
a good pick
FPL.
at some point. I wouldn't expect him to be a season keeper, um, and I definitely do not think he's a good pick to start the season with.
For sure. Now, this kind of segues into another pick here, Neto, because I think that he actually is looking, maybe not a season keeper, but he's definitely looking like a great enabler to start the season with, just because of what you were saying about Wolves kind of shifting from a defensive focus to a little bit more of an attack minded focus. And the spearhead of that attack has been Neto, or at least the
Yeah,
central figure in the attack. Um, and yeah, he's been playing well in preseason. He looks set to start the season, and he only costs
yeah.
five
I
and a half
actually
mil.
think that he is getting a little overhated on like FPL Twitter and YouTube in general. Um, he the Wolves have really good fixtures, and he looks like he's going to be extremely involved in their attack. His expected goal involvement is also like over 0.5, which is pretty good. So honestly, he could be a pretty good pick. I think he's getting way too much hate.
Yeah, and forgive me if you just said this, but I think Wolves are top of the fixture
Yeah, I
ticker,
think it's
right?
well, depending on what time horizon you're looking at, it's like Wolves and Arsenal. I think.
So, yep, definitely a good pick. And then Bailey, we talked about Bailey. I've got him in my team, but definitely a dubious pick. Definitely a fad. I've seen a lot of love for him and a lot of hate
Yeah,
for him in the FPL community.
we'll
So
see.
that'll
It's
would be
fun
an
to take
interesting
some
one to see how it
gambles.
plays out. Yep. But I think that about wraps things up for this video. If
Yeah,
I'm
it
right.
does. Make sure
So
to like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment. That'd be kind of sick. And then check us out on our socials at how_FPL.
absolutely. Also, you guys might have seen my cat crawl across the screen, so she says bye too. And we will see you guys